enough. It was a long, extended holiday weekend. Hopefully, you didn't have to work. And if you worked, that it was fun work like what Ben was doing the entire work weekend and making some money, stacking some chips from college to the NFL. It's the Awesemo Betting Show on the Awesemo Odds channel. Thank you all for joining us. We only ask one thing: hit that thumbs up button and subscribe. Well, really, three things in one. As the third would be, tell us your lock it up play, the one that you're most confident on. Could be Monday Night Football, NBA, NHL, soccer. It doesn't matter. We trust you out there are bringing knowledge and information like Ben is, of course, each and every show. What's happening, brother?
What's up, man? Yeah, good stretch of sports there. Obviously, starting with Thanksgiving, one of the best sports days of the year, and we followed that through. We had the end of college football. Now we get championship week, and then another Sunday in the books. But one more game tonight. We're obviously going to get to it. And yesterday was, a typical one of the things, Eitan. It was weird. There was not a ton of big spreads yesterday. So we had so many games where it's just like basically all I got to do is pick a winner. But it still provided, I thought, some upsets and some storylines coming out of Sunday.
Yeah, you and I had a conversation. We talked about Thursday going into that day, and then it was Sunday. So rarely do we have something like that where it's its own entity. It's usually one primetime game. Every now and again, you may get two Saturday games. But Thursday, I think outside of that Raiders-Cowboys game, the script for me was under, and then I got burned on that Cowboys-Raiders game. It was, you're right, much tighter over the weekend. And I found myself, especially in that later slate, where we had that 3-game afternoon kind of element where it was that Packers-Rams as the primetime. I found myself live betting to kind of make up for some earlier just pre-flop mistakes. But I do feel like the flow of games has been easier to pick, much like it's been more difficult pre-flop, if that makes sense. I don't know if that does make sense, but for me at least, I feel like once games start, I've been able to get ahead first, even last night, right? Able to get ahead of stuff early on a game flow, but shit, man, pre-flop, especially when things get a little tighter, it's been tough.
Yeah, I mean, the NFL is like that. And certainly you got to take, the reality of the situation. NFL is, I think, maybe the hardest sport to bet. It's very, very efficient lines out there. And that's why, of course, using things like OddsShopper to find the small edges, you got to take advantage of those right off the bat because, I like the Texans yesterday. Was really disappointed in their effort.
Yep.
I was happy that Baltimore won last night. But again, I think that as the season, we get the extra week this year and there's still quite a bit of football. So there's going to be ebbs and flows. I mean, it's just shocking to see a team like the Rams where they are right now. And then these other teams like the Patriots, who would have thought that they would be a serious contender? So it's just taking that long-term view, maybe not panicking, but we also can't just ignore what we're seeing on the field.
All right, we're going to hit tonight real quick. Was there one injury or was there one thing from a player standpoint that screwed you more than Zach Wilson getting hurt, that ruined not one, but two multi-leg OddsShopper produced parlays, one being a single game parlay, the other being a multiplayer prop parlay, and both of them were set to hit, Ben. All I needed was this kid not to get hurt, and unfortunately they bust.
And it happens. I mean, all we can do here, obviously, I know it's frustrating, all we can do is create the value. That doesn't mean you're going to win, as you guys know from the DFS side. So yeah, you were in, I mean, I was sweating that along with you. And we've had some, I know he's not on shows, one of the sharpest guys around. I got to give him a shout out to Sean Zahn, who does a lot of great work here. Did you see that parlay that he hit around Robin?
Is there any way that he can send out on our private Slack his plays ahead of time?
Use OddsShopper, my man, 150K. So he's getting a special spot in the Hall of Fame segments going forward. But it was, obviously the Miles Sanders situation is always a pain point, no matter what. The Eagles were you must have been disappointed. That was a bad effort yesterday.
Yeah, I'm disappointed because I had 2 units on the Eagles -3. I had
disappointing.
2 units on the Eagles halftime, full-time. Yeah, I was pretty upset. The one time I bet on this crumb squad, they screw me over and lose. I've been betting against them for like a month straight, and I've been losing, and I finally take them and tail them, and this is what they do to me, Ben.
It's tough. It's just, again, we got to just stay with it. And that's the thing. I do, of all the games, and I think a lot of people like this, Monday Night Football is my favorite. You get the full slate. you're a little tired, but it's just one game and you can put all your attention into it. I kind of like this game tonight. Seahawks, Washington, little competitive. It's only 1-point spread, but I think there's a lot of factors to break down.
All right, so let's jump in here. And you look at it, you mentioned it's a tight spread, pretty much the theme here so far. And yeah, I do see already Kent State should have cashed. It's amazing.
That game was wild.
It's amazing. Hit that thumbs up button, please, if you haven't already. We appreciate you all hanging here. We'll get to your Lockett ups before we get out of here, as you know. So let's start. It's a 1 point right now on BetMGM spread. It's at 47. There's even some workability with the money line, depending on how you like this. Seattle's only at -115, and then the break is Washington at -105. I just don't know if you have a strong feel across the board here. I feel the one thing that I actually do like is, and maybe this is just because I feel a lot of public sentiment is trending towards, well, these two teams suck, therefore they can't score. I think this game goes over. And that would be the only side/total feel that I have. It's not a truly confident one, Ben. So I'll let you start with the one that you feel the most confident on, but I don't know about a side on this one.
I lean to Seattle. It's not on my card currently. I do like over 46.5. It's ticked to 47 at some spots. Me and Matt Kajeski on the breakfast menu this morning both selected that as one of our plays. And I think it's just a product. And we're going to dive into these players a ton, but Russell Wilson's back. I do think you're going to see some positive regression. He's had 2 pretty bad starts here. And on the other side, say what you want about this guy. We've been talking about this for months. Taylor Heineke performs. It's not always pretty, but he can move the ball. And obviously Washington has lost a ton on their front. Their secondary wasn't good to begin with. And this is a game there. It should be competitive. I think both of these teams can get into the upper 20s tonight in a very competitive game.
Yeah. Is there an angle that you like where maybe this is more of a first half? And I'm not even saying like from a play standpoint, I just don't know how the game flow that you anticipate plays out, where if it's a slower start or if that regression back to the mean starts in the first quarter, first half, where we see this Seattle offense just kind of come out like gangbusters, something we haven't seen over the last 2 games.
Yeah, I don't have a, this isn't a game, in my opinion, where there's like, okay, there's one clear edge and they need to exploit it this way. I just think that both teams will have success. Nothing too crazy, nothing too fancy. I just look, both the defenses, particularly against the pass, I think can be had over the top for bigger plays. I don't see any major issues with anything. And certainly, again, you're losing guys on the front for Washington. That was supposed to be the strength of this defense. It never really materialized to begin with. So that's where I'm at. Seattle's a tough team. I mean, again, the last 2 weeks, they've done absolutely nothing. They got shut out against Green Bay. Then they went, they're home against Arizona, backup quarterback, and they lost 23-13 in a very just pedestrian output across the board. But I'm not overly deterred. I still think this team has some life. And then Washington, they've been winning games, but honestly, I don't think they're that good. I think Seattle would be my side if I had to pick one.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know if we treat Seattle like a team that's just destined to kind of come back to the middle, or if we treat Seattle like the last 2 weeks. Because if we're treating Washington like the last 2 to 3 weeks, then we should keep it in that same time frame for Seattle. Mm-hmm. And wouldn't you take Washington as a short home dog tonight?
So I think the difference for me specifically is that, okay, Seattle, what's been the biggest problem? Obviously in the last 2 weeks, it's been they can't really score. They've moved the ball, but they just haven't put it in the end zone. Green Bay and Arizona. So I go in, I'm looking passing yards allowed per attempt. Arizona's 4th, 6 yards per attempt. Very good. Green Bay is 5th. Also very good. Washington's 28th, 7.5. They're much worse. So this is not the same matchup that Russell Wilson has seen the last 2 weeks. He's had 2 top 5, defenses in terms of that metric in limiting things over the top. And with the secondary, Washington is abysmal. They allow a lot of plays. You've got Lockett, you've got Metcalf, you've got Collins. I think we see just a different type of efficient offense for Seattle. That's the big difference, because I get what you're saying, but Washington was limiting teams. Obviously, I can't explain the Tampa win, that's just very impressive. There's nothing to say about that. Carolina is done. Carolina is terrible. So I think you're going to split that. To me, though, this is a much different, matchup than Green Bay or Arizona.
Look, I think the Bucks, we see that, right? Nobody goes undefeated anymore. You have losses. It's not always to the best teams in the NFL.
Just an outlier.
Exactly. That's exactly it. But no, I'm with you on Carolina. And that offense is shameful. Whatever Matt Rule is trying to put together down there is just disgraceful. And that team, terrible. The fact that they got 21 maybe should be somewhat of reinforcement here that Seattle can score. So we're both like the over. I think we both like points on the board. You mentioned Seattle can move here. It's not often that I start with a same game parlay here, but I'm looking at a return, and this is from BetMGM. And again, we have these links below here for you out there. So if you're watching, hanging with us right below, click on those links, and you're going to get incredibly 3 free months of Awesemo Plus Platinum on top of a risk-free bet up to $1,000. So we have a lot for you. $10 at BetMGM off that code, 3 free months of Awesemo Plus Platinum, and then of course the risk-free bet up to $1,000. I'm interested in this, but I'm really more interested in what you have to say about this, because we're combining 2 player props that we're having to ask a little bit more of each quarterback. The return seems pretty juicy. Russell Wilson, Taylor Heineke, each to go 275 plus passing yards is a plus 500 return.
I mean, I get it. Again, we're going to have a lot more content on this very channel, which is why you want to like and subscribe, about the concepts behind same game parlays, about how you can use that correlation. And I know I mentioned it earlier in the show, but it bears repeating. Sean's on, who's one of the sharpest, kind of did that with some of those. You get a couple different props and you can navigate and you tell those stories. But I get that. I'm not overly, normally I say, I can get on board with that. I really can. I think that we could see a lot of passing volume here. I think if the game devolves, you could see both teams have some big plays over the top. I'm more comfortable on the Russell Wilson Seattle side with that. But as I said, say what you want about Taylor Heineke. This guy can play a little bit. I mean, when the volume is there, he can sling it and he can be effective. So I don't think it's crazy to think that he could have a pretty good game.
Telling you, the difference on the yardage, 246.5 for Heineke, 251.5 for Wilson. So again, that's why I mentioned you are asking a little bit more of each of these guys, but the return at plus 500 for the 2 of them, just something to look at, something to keep in mind here. All right, where are you beginning when we start to examine these player props? We'll hit Odds Shopper as well, as it's our Bible when
it is.
we constantly talk, right, about player props and building a ticket off of a narrative. We'll hit the prop party parlay as well here, but where to begin for you?
So I honestly did begin. I went to Odds Shopper because when you're pressed for time, I sorted by expected ROI, and one guy stood out immediately, and it was Alex Collins rushing yards. And I hit this last week, and it was not great, obviously, because they couldn't get ahead. They still almost got there. I look here because it was ridiculous. He had like 38 yards at halftime, and he finished with 36 yards. That's a bold strategy. But here we're looking at over under 44.5 rushing yards for Alex Collins. I go over our projections. Love the over. And this is why Odd Shopper is so important, Eitan. And you pointed this out. We don't just say we like over. We give you the projection. Alex's DFS projection is right there at 64.5 yards. So you get a good kind of assessment of where exactly we are at. And to me, this is pretty simple. The backfield has cleared out. There's a lot of guys injured. Yeah, DJ Dallas is there. I think that Alex Collins, in negative game scripts the last 2 weeks, he had 10 carries in both games. If he has 10 carries, you're probably slightly behind the 8 ball, but he can get there. He needs to average 4.5 yards per carry. That's very doable. If he pushes up to 16, 15, 20 carries, forget it. You're going to get there barring something ridiculous. I think this is one of the best props we've seen in a while, and I obviously have this on my card.
And it's interesting. I just want to add this because I'm in PA. It's a legal state, and Odd Shopper is going to give you the specific book where you can bet it. And it's not only because the value has been shopped. In some cases, it's because you can't place that bet on other books. So, for example, there are a couple, and right here where we are, there are a couple of books where you can't place a bet on a Seattle Seahawk player prop unless it's in a single game parlay. There are a couple of books where you can place them. So that's where Odd Shopper's value, I think, becomes ancillary and so necessary, where it's not just giving you the number, the projection, the value that you're getting back, but it's specifically finding something where another book may not want to take the risk for whatever reason.
Yeah, you're taking advantage of finding the best number. And again, just looking at this game, Seattle could easily be playing from ahead. That is something we haven't said in recent weeks. Alex Collins is that type of back. He obviously can handle the workload. And right now, I do think that there is a chance that it is a timeshare, but there's also a very real chance, in my opinion, that it's like a 70-30. And if he's getting the lion's share back there, I really feel confident that this number it's just wrong, and he will have opportunities. So again, it's a prop. You're getting a fine line in terms of juice, -110. This is an all systems go situation. You got to lean over here.
Yeah, and if you combine what we have there on the other high win possibility for the player prop, J.D. McKissick, now under 18.5 rushing yards, pops in. And this feeds into how you really feel Washington is going to play both backs. And if this is going to be an up week or down week for Antonio Gibson. And if it's a big week for Gibson, that's definitely going to mean a lot less for McKissick.
Certainly, obviously, it would help if Seattle wins the game. We don't want them, we don't want Washington playing from ahead, because I think McKissick is more than capable. It's just volume. If he only gets a couple carries, you should be in good shape if you're doing something like that. But if he gets 6, 7, 8 carries, it's going to be tough to stay under this number. So I'm a little unsure, but if you feel confident in Seattle in the game, I don't mind adding that to the card.
All right. A couple of other player props before we get out. We'll hit the prop party parlay, and it's an easy one. I just mentioned actually the two of them there. But I am curious, when you're on here, and this is something that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, but just to kind of refresh, especially for people who are new to this great free service, Odd Shopper, that we have provided for you. You're sorting by expected ROI, largest to smallest, not expected win percentage, largest to smallest, right? And why?
So yeah, I mean, we have all sorts of, you could also sort by hold. There's a lot of different things. And again, we're gonna have some content talking about these, but for me, the ROI is going to cut right through all the red tape. It is literally talking about your return on investment if you make the bet. Win probability is great. You can see which bets are most likely to win, but if you don't have the right line or you're laying a lot of juice, your ROI is not going to be great, because obviously the return on investment is just lower. So for me, getting that ROI right there, you're easily going to be able to identify some of them. And again, it doesn't mean just, oh, if you want to do this, you can, but you don't have to just take the top of the board. You can just see, okay, these are some players I should look into. These are some types of, and a guy like that for me is Tyler Lockett. I like Tyler Lockett a lot tonight. I think in DFS, he makes a lot of sense. And I'm really happy to see that his props, we are leaning over on his receptions and receiving yards. For me, I like his receiving yards better at 64.5. This was at 61.5 just a couple hours ago. This is clearly going up. It's up to 66.5 at BetMGM. So this is one, if you're going to do it, I think the time is now. But I think Lockett over the top of this defense, Eitan, I've already mentioned, I think the secondary is suspect. Wilson should have time with the pass rush being mitigated. I could see Lockett having one of those. I mean, this is the type of guy, it only takes a couple of bombs. I think one of those could be caught tonight.
Yeah, I agree. Lockett is definitely the guy that should be the heaviest of targets by all means, especially depending on what happens with Washington's focus. Russell Wilson, again, we talked about him earlier on that same game parlay, but realistically 246.5. We talked about him at 275 plus, and you were leaning towards Seattle as far as liking that. You have to love 246.5 with what you mentioned with Tyler Lockett going over his receiving yards, also having DK Metcalf out there, and really how we've seen it on Odd Shopper, which again is pulling Alex and Awesemo's projections here. We're going over 21.5 completions for Russell Wilson. We're going over the receiving yards for both receivers and Metcalf and Lockett. Metcalf at 65.5. I would think that it's a slam dunk, not to use cross sports analogies here, but I think it's a slam dunk. You would go over 246.5 for Russell Wilson.
Certainly. And again, depending on what state you're in, you're going to have access to different books. There's a 240.5 out there. I love that line. If you can find 240.5, you should bet it. Even at 246, I'm with you. This just speaks to the importance of line shopping. Obviously, we want to find those best odds. And you mentioned if you like, I like Lockett. I think Metcalf can be effective. Well, if all this happens, we know that Russell Wilson needs to stay busy. And you're seeing these totals creep up north of 250 in a lot of books. I think that this is the value we want to capture in the afternoon. By kickoff, would it really shock you, Eitan, if this is at 255?
No.
No.
What do you think? Where do you get off? 249.5? Is that your ceiling?
I mean, I think anything around there is okay. If it climbs to about, where we're talking mid 250s, again, can he go over that? Of course he can go over that, but you've lost a ton of value. And to me, that's more of a, maybe you just stay away. You can never lose anything by passing. If you missed it, don't ever say, oh man, I missed it, I got to find a way in. There will be more. You always want to be very selective. And that's something that we always preach. So I think that with Russell Wilson right now, though, it's still very, very opportunistic to go to him, to go to Lockett, and definitely just in general, I'm over on Seattle props today.
McKissick and Heineke have the same exact yardage prop for rushing yards.
I mean, Heineke can move a little bit, man. I wouldn't
18.5.
So again, obviously, like most quarterbacks, it's just a volume issue. When he runs the ball, he's very effective.
Yes,
I mean, the guy's longest rush in the last 6 games, every time he's had a carry, has been at least 10 yards. So when he gets going, he only needs a couple of carries, but is he only going to run the ball 1 or 2 times? That's what I think you're afraid of. But I kind of think Seattle wins the game, and I think that might make Heineke more prone to running. I'm going to lean over if I had to take a position on that. What do you think?
Yeah, I like that. I like Heineke over. I think if you like Seattle winning the game, you don't have to worry about the kneel down effect here by any means. He can move. And I think both quarterbacks, look, the reality is Russell Wilson has moved up. I was doing something for Prize Picks earlier. He was at 10.5. He's at 14.5 on the books here for BetMGM. So this is moving in the wrong direction. But if you like Washington up, then maybe you take a flyer on Seattle going over 14.5 for Wilson. I wouldn't touch that just because it's now north of that 10.5. But Heineke, yeah, especially with the game script of them being down, having to throw more in the second half, I could see that, Ben, where you get a couple of runs in that game, 2 runs in that game, 2 big runs in that game, puts you at what, 15, 16 yards? And then anything can happen on a sneak. Anything can happen in short yardage situations. So I don't hate it. It's a little bit at minus 115 to minus 110 to the over, to your point.
Yeah. And I think we've seen, in these games, he's been pretty willing to run more often than not every game, but all in all, Taylor Heineke is a guy that has some dual threat ability. When you're dropping back, you get broken plays. And again, I think in this situation, this is another one. And I'm going to get a little dangerous here. Why not? It's Monday. Let's go and let's check out. What about this? Just a splash, obviously. Taylor, and if this hits, Chad, I swear I want some credit because this is not going to hit. But if it does, Taylor Heineke, first touchdown, 20-1.
Wow. This is like this is one of the most anti-Rasa bets that we've ever had on this show. Dare I say, you hypocrite.
I mean, he's not, unfortunately, he runs a good amount. He doesn't really run in the red zone. That's not what he's about. But I will say, and I think this is not the end all be all, but it's a little confusing because against Green Bay, if anyone remembers that game, he clearly scored on the ground and they reviewed it and they said that he slid at the 1-inch line. He's shown a willingness to do this. The price has to be right. But if you're telling me it's a 20-1 equates to 5%, I think he's got a better chance than that. Obviously, they might not score first, and it's probably not him. But as a tenth of a unit, a quarter unit, I think there are worse exotics than that tonight.
I don't hate it. I thought you may go somebody completely off just the beaten path and like DJ Dallas or Ricky Seals Jones, right? 2 guys that you immediately look up and think to yourself, wow, that's got to be a long shot play. Like it's not the obvious one, especially since it's a primetime game. But I can get down with Heineke.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I just think he has a unique out in the sense, of course, he's going to be on the field. It's a low probability play. This is different than going over on Alex Collins rushing yards or Lockett receiving yards. We know that, but if you're looking for a portfolio that has not just straight bets in it, you can do that. You can also do, of course, the prop party parlay, which you already talked about a little bit. Get some bang for your buck if you hit both.
Absolutely. I'll come back to that and lock it up. We'll hit rapid fire, though. Once you take the lead here on the way out, then we'll lock it up, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think for me, just in this game, we've got a situation. I'm just going to correlate everything. I like the over, and that's going to in turn give me the overs for a lot of these passing props with Seattle and even their rushing props. So I look at that. Then, of course, and you're going to be seeing us throughout the week, it is championship week in college football. We got a lot of big time games. We got Georgia and Bama. If you like Georgia, the time is now. It's at 6.5. It's going to move, I think, towards 7 and probably over 7. So if you want to back Georgia now, if you want to back Bama, wait. That would be my advice there. And then we've got a lot of other very competitive games to break down coming up. So I'm really, really excited about that.
I know you don't love them by all means, but I would just add for the people who do bet futures. If you like Alabama to win this game, then you're a fool for not taking at least a flyer at Alabama plus 650, in my opinion, because that would change drastically, Ben, if in fact Alabama can beat Georgia straight up. Covering is different. I wouldn't say that. If you just like Bama with the points, that's one thing. But if you like Bama, if you're out there taking Bama straight up, then again, if you're anti-futures, which it makes a ton of sense, I understand that, but these are those small moments where I would at least look at that and offer it up to say, why not a small unit?
I'm sorry, for Bama to win the whole thing?
Yeah. They're at 650 now. Georgia's at minus 220. If Bama beats Georgia straight up, those numbers are going to move drastically.
Yeah, I think the question there, and we could do a whole show on this,
we should,
is do you think there's any chance that Bama gets in if they lose the game? Because if you think the answer to that is yes, then you should bet that number because you have multiple outs, even if they lose the game. I don't know about that. I think it would take something extraordinary, but certainly if Bama wins that game, they're probably going to be the favorite to win it all after that.
All right, let's lock it up, my friend. On the way out, I see Dan has jumped in here. Thoughts on the first half total? 23.5 on some books, juice to the under. Look, if you can get the first half total at 24, but I'd always tell you, this is a Thursday night play. Thursday night, 24, it's an underplay in the first half. Monday night, you get the benefit of the extra day. Ben talked about going over. We talked about that in the beginning. If you can get some break, like if you can get over 23.5 at plus money, even if it's at even money, I would take a shot at it. Otherwise, I wouldn't plus. I don't mess around with Monday Night Football first half totals, Ben. Only Thursday night, which is more rushing, by the way.
It certainly is. I'm more with you than not. I prefer the full game over. If it starts really slow or you have an angle, obviously more power to you. For me, I don't think that's going to be on my card tonight. It leads me right into my lock it up, though. I think over in the game. I really do think both teams will get out there. Seahawks probably, in my opinion, are more likely to lead the charge, but the Seahawks defense has shown that they can give up some points, and I think Heineke will do enough to keep Washington in it, and that's a good thing for the over.
My lock it up is Taylor Heineke first touchdown.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Mortal lock, right?
No, all right. Real quick, I just built this. This is my prop player parlay. Jeez, party. Too many P's involved.
I know.
Here. Honestly, all right. But this is it. I just built the prop party parlay. It's a single game parlay for tonight. Over 44.5 Alex Collins rushing yards. Over 59.5 Lockett receiving yards. Over 249.5 Russell Wilson and passing yards. Under 24.5 McKissick receiving yards. That's a plus 1,000 return.
10-1. And again, a lot of that is correlated because if Wilson has a huge game, it's going to force Washington to throw the ball a lot. And obviously the skill position players for Seattle are in an advantageous position. And that is, again, what you can do with Odd Chopper. If you have any questions on this stuff, at Shander Show, I know Eitan's super active on Twitter, at JazzResDFS. I'm not, but I will respond, I promise. It's going to be a fun game tonight. I think we're in a good spot. If you guys have any questions, again, hop in Discord, hop in chat. We want you as part of the team. Shout out to Mike behind the glass, doing a great job as always. And of course, stay tuned for more content here at Awesemo Odds. We're going to be providing it throughout the week. Good luck tonight, friends. Talk to you guys soon.
And the links. Hit the links.
Hit the links.
Come on.